Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, this is the Inept General, and screw this royal wedding coming up, we have some Total War Warhammer 2 news. The new announcements and details of the next DLC for Total War Warhammer 2 have been released, and to nobody's surprise, it is being called the Queen and the Crone, and will feature Alarielle, the Ever-Queen, and Hellbrunn, the high priestess of the cult of Cain. Let's call her that. Now, these two are going to go head-to-head. We have a whole new unit. We have a whole new trailer. So without holding us up too much, let's take a quick look at that trailer, shall we? Alright, ladies and gentlemen, here we go.
A vision comes to me.
Hellbrunn, Alarielle. We knew it was coming. She's in her full mask. It looks like they've gone old lady body on old Hellbrunn.
Of death. Sounds of agony. The ritual of death night.
They're still ripped, I have to say.
I feel it in the meadows. I sense it in the air. Your wickedness growing.
Sisters of Avalon, Executioners, Doomfire Warlocks in the background. Those were very oddly coloured witch elves. I think they may be our Regiments of Renown that we're getting with the pack, guys.
Cain, the maker of widows. I know you seek it.
Summoning treeman units, dryads, treekin, treeman himself. That's a bit of a weird take, but we'll get into that a little bit later.
Will bring the light to end your darkness, Crone Hellbrunn.
Handmaidens on their horses. Dark sorceresses. Sisters of Avalon, Doomfire Warlocks. A lot of the stuff we were expecting, guys, but great to see them in game. Shadow Warriors. Sisters of Slaughter, yes. Woo, that was a good trailer. This is a great piece of artwork there as well. So out on the 31st of May, hope you guys are looking forward to it. So let's dig into what we're going to get with this DLC a little bit, shall we? At the outset, we know we're getting Alarielle, the Ever-Queen, who's going to be the religious leader of the High Elves, very much representing life in a way to the High Elves. If you'd want to know a bit more about her story, where she comes from, how she became the Ever-Queen, do check out my Alarielle lore video popping up in the top right-hand corner now, or you'll find a link in the description below if you want to check it out after you finished watching this one. It's a great little story, guys. Do give it a look. So we know a little bit from the Steam page about what she's going to get as far as her campaign bonuses. It looks like she will impose public order because she's worshipped wherever she goes in Ulthuan. Not only because she's the Ever-Queen, but that in itself brings about a magic aura where each High Elf almost can't help but almost fall in love with her instantly, and there are a few who are immune to this effect, such as Tyrion and Teclis, which is maybe why she likes them so much. Tyrion, of course, being her lover, so it's good to have them reunited in the game. She also reduces corruption. I imagine that's all kind of corruption, Skaven, Undead, Chaos. So she'll reduce corruption in territories she's in as well. If not, maybe the wider map of all your territories. That might be a bonus in her upgrade tree, it seems like. But they've also done something that I find pretty interesting and good, in that what they've done is when Chaos sort of corruption does rise a little bit in her territories, it tends to lower her power level. She gets worse. And this is very much true to the lore, in that when there would be Chaos, she has this very weird relationship with particularly Chaos in the lore, where when Chaos gets stronger, she gets weaker, but also she's very strong against fighting Chaos. So if she catches Chaos early, she can wipe it out, but if Chaos gets a chance to grow and really supplant itself in the land, she gets much weaker. And I like the way they brought that to the game, or look to be able to bring that to the game. She'll also have 2 laws of magic, or a mixed law of life and high magic. The only item they mentioned is a Star of Avalon, but I imagine she'll have others. As far as her mounts are concerned, she has the Elven Steed, the Philmar Steed, which is the higher armored horse, really, and will have the Great Eagle. I think her and a Great Eagle will be quite a potent mixture on the battlefield. Now, one unique thing to her faction they've done that I think I'll talk about here is that they gave her sort of wood elf units. They gave her the Dryads, the Treekin, and the Treeman. Now, this is a bit weird. I understand why they did it. It very much makes her a distinctive feature. And the goddess who represents the Queen of the Wood Elves, Ariel, which this might actually see the death nail in her ever appearing in the game, which is a huge shame. I was holding out hope. But it might see her go away because they are linked, the two of these people, the Ever Queen and Ariel, the Queen of the Wood Elves, by the goddess they empower, or they are empowered by. The Ever Queen gets some power from this goddess, whereas the Wood Elf Queen, Ariel, is actually the living avatar of the goddess. So it's a bit weird, and that's maybe the link they're drawing on. Also the fact that historically, in the Battle of Chaos, or the beginning of history of the High Elves, effectively, or where Warhammer history really picks up with them, there's Chaos invades the island of Ulthuan, and the Ever Queen at the time gives her children to Durfu to take back across under the water to protect them in Athel Loren. So Durfu takes the children and returns home, but Durfu used to live in Avalorn, which is kind of the starting province of the Ever Queen. So I think they're pulling on that history and lore a little bit and allowing her to have Wood Elf units. And now I just think it's a bit weird. It seems unnecessary. There's a few other units that you can bring on to the Wood Elves to fill them out. It'll make a very interesting army to have a kind of hybrid Wood Elf, High Elf army. But a bit of a strange choice for me. I'm not really sure why they did it. And of course, very easy for them to do. Maybe I don't want to be cynical here. I'm looking forward to playing it very much, but maybe a bit of a cop-out in the fact that they already have those units in the game. It's not much effort to sort of boost up the roster just by throwing in some Treeman units in there. So that's one of my slight gripes about this. But, you know, I see where they're going for if they just want to make a slightly different faction to the High Elf factions we've had so far. Now, she also has a couple of aspects. She has the attribute, the Defender of Ulthuan, which means that she will, very interestingly, if Elves control, I'm not sure if this is allies as well, I have to imagine it's just her faction. If she controls different territories in Ulthuan, she'll get different benefits from each one of those territories, but she has to control them in the entirety. If invaders come over and take a city, then it looks like she'll lose that benefit, and it might actually make her suffer in regards to them not having the entirety of the island. I'm not sure whether this will work with allies or not. The Steam page didn't elaborate, something we'll just have to wait and see on. But for the most part, that's her. She does have a unique right that will only be available to her faction on, I have to imagine, on either of the campaigns. And that is the Invocation of Lilith, who is the goddess who is linked to both Ariel and herself. And that's just something that really just makes Handmaiden stronger. It makes her unit, the Sisters of Avalon. We'll get into the units in a bit more detail a little bit later. And it makes Dryad stronger as well. Just kind of a boost to those particular units. But that's her unique right. So moving on from Alariel, let's go to Hellbrunn. Now, Hellbrunn looks like her gift or attributes on the campaign will be she gives an upkeep reduction to Witch Elves, Executioners, and Sisters of Slaughter. So that's pretty good. I'd like to see her give an upkeep reduction to Assassins as well. They're very much tied to the religion which she's the leader of, which is the worship of Cain, the elven god of murder. She's very much the High Priestess, very much kind of basically the Pope for the Dark Elves. So that's what her main attribute will be about. She also has something called the Death Knight, which looks to be like her equivalent to Alariel's, like having on and off power with chaos and corruption, in that every once in a while she has to have something called the Death Knight. Now, the idea on this in the lore is that Hellbrunn gets old, and the Morathi refuses to tell Hellbrunn how to stay young forever, like Morathi has, because they've been around for millennia, these two. But Morathi keeps that knowledge back from her, which is one of the reasons that Hellbrunn hates Morathi. But if you want the full story on why Hellbrunn hates Morathi, check out my Hellbrunn lore video. If I don't say so, one of my best. I liked making it. It came off really well. I'm really happy with it, guys. Check out that story. That's kind of messed up and a huge slaughter fest, so you guys might enjoy that one. But she hates Morathi for a variety of reasons, but one of the reasons is that she has to, like, once in a while, Morathi lets her rejuvenate, and this is what they're trying to recreate in the game. So she becomes young when she does this, she bathes in blood, she comes out, she's young again for a little while, before aging again fairly rapidly. And that's the idea of Death Knight. She has to have this ritual, she perks up her powers, and then they start to wane over time, it looks like. So I like that they've tried to bring that into the mechanics of the game. Very cool. To do that sort of Death Knight one, she has to kill a number of slaves. They said that whenever you hold a Death Knight ceremony, Dark Elf armies will rise up, and you will get some of their loot and stuff. Now, I don't know if that's all Dark Elves. They'll just spawn like random mercenary armies that will go out and try and win battles and give some of the returns to you. I'm not exactly sure how that will work, but it's piqued my interest a little bit and might be quite fun to see play out on the campaign map. So we'll have to wait and see what that is exactly, but it sounds very interesting. Now, she will also have what her items are, which is the Death Sword and the Cursed Blade, which she has in the tabletop. I'm sure, like with Alarielle, we'll see her have other items as well, but they're the ones that were highlighted. Now, as far as her mounts are concerned, she gets a Dark Steed, which is basically a horse. She gets the Cauldron of Blood, which is that big moving shrine to Cain, which is what I think was probably her best bet, or she can ride on a Manticore. So they've also introduced sort of Manticores for a number of the Dark Elf units they're introducing with this pack. And she has a unique rite as well, which is the rite of the sacrifice of Drakires, I think it is. I probably said that wrong. And that effectively gives her a bonus in battle versus High Elves. It also gives you a sort of a downward trend on diplomacy versus High Elves. But why would the High Elves and the Dark Elves ever be getting along? That's silly. So no real deterrent there. And it also gives a rank rise to the recruit of Death Hags and Witch Elves. So making your Witch Elves and everything else stronger. Basically, when you do this right, go and slaughter some High Elves, as we are all wont to do from time to time. But those are the two legendary lords we're getting. Can't wait to see them. Long expected, as I've said, but, good to have them finally in the game coming up. And let's have a look at some of the units that we're going to get. So the unique units for the High Elves are, firstly, the Sisters of Avalorn. Now, the Sisters of Avalorn, we've seen, they have magical bows, and in this game, they will do both magic and flaming damage with their bows, and it says in the description they'll be half decent at combat as well, and they'll also, of course, benefit from martial prowess, which I think most, if not all, of the High Elf units do anyway. Now, the Shadow Warriors sound very interesting. So the Shadow Warriors, as we might have expected, have Vanguard and Stalk, but this is when they get a little bit more interesting. It's particularly noted that they have long range. Now, that's long range for elves, bear in mind. And with this long range, it specifically says they can fire without being detected. Now, against a human player, that won't work. But against the AI, that could be pretty great. And that used to be called Snipe ability in Total War Warhammer 1. I'm not sure if they've carried that over, but they didn't call it Snipe. But that's what it is. And here's the better bit. They can fire in any direction and on the move. So you can just keep them all over the place. Yeah, I won't have a clue what's going on if you use these guys against them, if it works properly. So the Shadow Warriors look like they might be fairly potent, and from the leak we had a few days ago, we know there'll be an upgraded version of them as well in the game. So it won't just be the Shadow Warriors, but the Shadow Warriors and then an upgraded version of them too. And then last but not least, we have the new hero unit for the High Elves, which is the Handmaiden. Now it looks like she's mostly going to be contributing to diplomacy. It looks like they say that specifically she'll have a lot of branching paths on her upgrade tree, but she will benefit diplomacy, trade, and influence, which is a secondary currency which you can use as the High Elves, and she'll also kind of get a choice between being a battle-focused, I assume that means hand-to-hand melee-focused, Handmaiden, or focused on her archery. Now, there were no mounts mentioned for the Handmaidens, but in the trailer we do see them on horses, so I'm not sure that's an oversight from them writing up the Steam page, or it was just they only put them on horses for the trailer. So we'll have to wait and see for that, but I think they probably will have a mount option of at least the horses. So moving on from those unique units, and not counting the Treemen because we've seen them and we know what they are, we have the Dark Elf units. Now we have the Sisters of Slaughter, who will have poison, fear, an ability called Trial of Blades, which is when they're losing, they get sort of buffs to their stats. And that's the idea that the Sisters of Slaughter are a gladiator, I don't want to say cult, group, shall we say, that have grown up. And their thing is they love a challenge. They really love getting into a challenge. And the idea that they're losing a battle means they're really getting the challenge they've been craving for, and so fight better. Now, a couple of things they didn't mention with the Sisters of Slaughter that I think they probably will have when we see their sort of stats, is they will have Frenzy, and because they do have a shield in the tabletop, I think they might have some missile resistance as well. So you know what, they're not too dissimilar to Witch Elves, but they'll have a bit more missile resistance, and they'll do better when they're losing a fight. So that's an interesting kind of a toss-up. I think that's how they'll play out in the game. Now, we also have the Doomfire Warlocks. Now, these are essentially what happens to you if you are a male magic wielder in the realm of the Dark Elves. To cut a long story short, it's a bit more complicated than that. But basically, half their souls are kind of ripped out. It's a whole thing. But these guys are cool. They're not dissimilar to the Sisters of the Thorn for the Wood Elves, if any of you guys had a chance to play with them, in that they have bound magic spells to them. Now, in the game, we know they'll have Soul Blight and they'll have Lesser Doombolt, which are spells they'll have bound to them and will be on a cooldown, I have to imagine. Now, when they do get into melee combat, they do magic and poison damage, so that could be helpful in its own right if you're looking to chase down units with that poison on a fast cavalry unit, with the bound spells as well helping out around the battlefield. So looking forward to Doomfire Warlocks. Also, that image of them is horrific. Horses without lips is a terrible thing to see. My god, that's burned into my mind. Anyway, last unit for the Dark Elves that we have officially been told is the Supreme Sorceress, which is a lord, a magical lord, something that's been missing from the Dark Elf armies. You'll get them with different lords of fire, dark, shadow, beast, and death, we've been told. And their mounts will be the Dark Steed, the horse, the Cold One, the dinosaur, Pegasus, Manticore, or indeed a Black Dragon. Now, magic user and a Black Dragon, I think only Chaos have magic users on dragons at the moment, but that could be a potent mixture in multiplayer as well. We'll have to wait and see how that plays out, but looking forward to seeing it. Now, I said they're the last official one. Towards the end of the Steam page, it is sort of hinted at that we may see the Charybdis, the hugest, largest monster the Dark Elves have. It's a sea monster. It's so big, it spends most of its time in water, but they drag it ashore from time to time, and it was hinted that they might unleash that upon us at a later time. But super looking forward to that, and it also hints we might be seeing other things building up to the release, which isn't till the very last day of the month. So, yeah, a lot more to come, I'm sure. But this is just what we have confirmed so far. But the Charybdis, my god, that must have cost them a lot of Charlemagne's. We'll have to wait and see the final tally. Hopefully they'll give that to us at some point. Now, apart from this, guys, we also have Regiments of Renown for the Dark Elves and the High Elves. Now, in the Steam page, they only mentioned the faction, but I think this will translate across all of the factions as Regiments of Renown want to do. And so let's start off with the Scions of Mathlan, and that is the Sea God of the Elves. And this is a unit of spearmen for the Elves who will get something called the Aura of Protection. Now, this is quite interesting. It's a power, it's an ability that gives them a ward save and a save to nearby units while your mana is at 50%. And then we get Expert Charge Defense, which is the charge defense against them. So that's pretty good as well. Now, moving on, we have the Pure Main Company, which is a unit of White Lions of Crace, and they have the Guardian passive ability, which I'm not 100%... Oh, I think that's just a boost to a unit around them if it's a hero unit. We've seen that before, I believe. And they have Sunder Armor, which is huge to be able to Sunder Armor with a unit of White Lions. That could be great. Now, we also have the Keepers of the Flame, which are a unit of Phoenix Guard, who are just given magic attacks and something known as the Mark of Assyrian, which means that entities will burst into flames upon death and deal damage to any nearby enemies. That is very interesting, that they sort of die and then they sort of damage other things near them. Very fun to see. Looking forward to seeing that one, particularly if there's an effect where they actually do get set on fire. That'd be pretty great. And then we have the Storm Riders, who are a Sea Guard unit, and they cause fear, can Vanguard deploy, and can fire while moving. That's pretty good for a unit of Laferne Sea Guard, to be able to fire while moving. That sounds very exciting to have a play around with. Then we have the Grey, a unit of Shadow Warriors, who are being introduced with this DLC, and they have a Loex Shroud, which increases the speed and reduces their detection range, basically just making them harder to find, despite the fact they have Snipe, and they'll have the Snipe ability. Now, the fact that they write Snipe in this thing makes me very curious why they didn't write it in the regular troop one. I think that's something that needs some clarification, whether all Shadow Warriors have Snipe, or maybe just these ones. But it sounded like from the general description of Shadow Warriors that all of them have Snipe, so it's a bit weird they'd mention it in the Regiments of Renown. Something to be cleared up, we'll have to wait and see on that one. The Everqueen's Court Guard, which are a unit of the Sisters of Avalon, and they have the Encourage ability, which is a morale buff. We've seen it with the Dwarves, and they have something known as the Banner of Avalon, which increases the Winds of Magic recharge rate. Now, that's quite cool, because this is a unit that are tied to the Everqueen, and the Banner of Avalon, if I remember correctly off the top of my head, is a banner sort of sewed together by the handmaidens of the Everqueen's Court, and it's a banner of leaves, and when she dies, dies, the Everqueen, they use it as her death shroud, but every Everqueen gets one made for her by her court. And it's cool that these guys are basically her real protectors, and that's what they're carrying around. So it's good to see that element introduced, but it also means we probably won't see it as a magic item for the Everqueen. But that's fine, I like that. The next we have the Fireborn, which are Dragon Princes, which are bonus versus large and fire attacks. That could be great, particularly when fighting these regenerating Dark Elf monstrosities. And then we have the Heralds of the Wind, a unit of Illyrian Reavers with bows, and they're quicker and they have superior melee stats. So just a unit of Illyrian Reavers with bows, you can fight a bit better and run a bit faster. And then we are going into the Dark Elf Regiments of Renown, and we're starting with a unit of Dread Spears, and they are the Hellbrunni, and they get poison attacks and expert charge defense. So yeah, there we go, expert charge defense against all, basically. It doesn't just have to be large units. So that's kind of good to see. And then we get the Sisters of Singing Doom, which are a unit of Witch Elves. I believe we actually saw them in that trailer, those red-haired ones. I think that's them. It might not be, that just might be a palette color change, but I think that might be them. And they are basically Witch Elves that cause terror, not a huge boost to them there. And then we get the Blades of the Blood Queen, which are a unit of Hageneth Executioners. Again, I think that was the unit in the trailer. And they have Guardian, which we've seen, and they have Frenzy. So armor-piercing, frenzied guys who boost up any sort of hero around them. So that's pretty good. Next, we have the Bolt Fiends, which are a unit of Dark Shards. Great name, Bolt Fiends. Hey, what'd you do? I'm a Bolt Fiend. Anyway, they have Shield Breaker, which means that the unit they hit have reduced melee, missile defense, basically. So they can just whistle down, and I don't think that's an armor-specific one. I think that's just missile defense in general. So that's pretty good, and they have a better range. So they can just warm them up for all the rest of your archers to absolutely destroy a unit that is incoming. Then we have Slanesh's Harvesters, and these are Doomfire Warlocks. They have Word of Pain and Soul Stealer, so extra bounce spells or replacement bounce spells. I'm not sure. It doesn't specify. So they might have 4, or they might just have 2 different ones. Hoping for the 4. Then we have the Knights of the Ebon Claw, which do a Rampage, and they do Murderous Prowess upgraded to Murderous Mastery. That's it. So... Oh no, sorry, they don't rampage, so you'll never lose control of them. That's actually kind of handy to have a unit of Cold One Knights that you don't lose control of, potentially, in a fight. Then we have the Chill of Sontar, which is a War Hydra with Frostbite. I believe that comes over from Norsca, which is the slowing effect around you, and Fire Breath with Frost Breath, which deals more damage and applies Frostbite, so you can fire across the slowing down effect with your magical fire as well. So basically a Winter Hydra. Bit weird, but you know what, there we go. It seems like a lot of fun to play with. Will probably look pretty cool as well. I can imagine this kind of albino white Hydra. That'd be pretty great to see. And then last but by no means least, we have the Raven Heralds, which are Dark Riders who are mounted on Dark Pegasi. Now, we saw a unit flying in the sky above Hellbrunn's head in that trailer, but I actually wasn't sure whether that was just done for the trailer and they got a whole bunch of units up there, or that was this unit, though, apparently. So that's great to see Dark Riders on Pegasus fly around. So, you know, Dark Elf Pegasus Knights, but only one unit of them. Pretty fun. But that's about it for the Regiments of Renown and the details of the trailer, guys. Hope you're as excited as I am. The only thing I think we're missing is that there are still a few High Elf units missing, and as I said earlier, the Treekin thing is a bit weird. We could have seen a few other things. There are also still a few Dark Elf units missing, but if we get the Charybdis, this is kind of what we expected. The only thing I thought we'd get extra in this pack, for my money, was that, firstly, I wasn't expecting the Charybdis. I didn't think we were going to get that, but apparently we are. There was a leak a while ago, but we've seen them put stuff in the game files that never became anything before, so I took that with a pinch of salt. But it looks like we're getting the Charybdis, but the one thing I thought we were going to get with this as well was the Medusas, which we never got. But I thought that would have fit in very well with this package, but we might get them further down the line, or not at all. Who knows? But hope you guys are excited as I am. As I said, guys, check out the lore videos for Ariel and Hellbrunn, and even if you want to know about Durfu and why Alariel maybe has Treeman in her army, do check out that video as well, popping up in the top right hand corner, but you'll find links to all of them below. As always, guys, hope you enjoyed this video. Pumped for the 31st. Hopefully you get a few more nuggets of news on the way to there. But guys, finally we have some Total Warhammer news. I'm going to go rewatch the trailer. Alright guys, bye.